it's weird. We get into the competitive. What do you get for this? What do you get for that? And sometimes people will actually think that, and these guys go out. A lot of these guys go out of their way to get in touch with me about this, and they say, "What do you charge for this?" And I'll say something that nobody ever believes, like, "Oh, that's $15 a foot." Well, how do you get $15 a foot for that? Well, I send them the estimate for $15 a foot, and they approve it. And if they don't, then I stay home, and I don't do that.
On this episode of All Things Wood Floor, part 2 of my conversation with Floor Pro TJ Haas from Mad Science Flooring. That's one of the hottest podcasts we've had yet, TJ Part 1. Listen, go to Wood Floor Business, scroll down and choose from any of your favorite podcast platforms, Podbeam, Spotify, iHeart, Apple, Amazon, Pandora. There's a bunch of them there. And you'll find Part 1 of my conversation with TJ. This episode, we're going to go over rotary sanding, a deep dive into traditional floor sanding, today's techniques and changing paper and the proper abrasives. We're going to go over the bragging rights on how to make a flat floor. He's going to go into living and doing things that other flooring people don't typically do and charging a premium quality for his craftsmanship. We're talking about creating additional revenue streams, vintage floor machines, even extreme machine floor failures. So join me today on All Things Wood Floor, our guest, Part 2, TJ Haas. Let's get to it. Well, you bring up dust containment and some of the new technology. So let me tee you up on this one. So the very first time I ever had the idea to do a podcast, I'm not sure what they were. I just happened to say to Wood Floor Business, I'd like to talk to some of the guys I know and record it. Would you take a look at it? I got one of my best buddies, one of the best technicians I know in New England, and we sat down together. And the topic was rotary sanders because I sell all of them. And after about 20 minutes, I had to can the podcast. I realized he'd never used one. Never seen one, couldn't follow the conversation. He didn't know what I was talking about. But you do, right? Or rotary sanders are part of what you do?
Yeah, and so like I was a split drum rotary sander guy for forever, and then belt machine rotary sander, and then we would use all different mixed sanding systems because I never want to repeat the same action. That's kind of my goal, is to make sure at every step of the way, I try to change the action that's sanding across the floor because that helps me not scalp out the grain. It helps me keep the floor flatter, and it helps me reduce the scratch for the next action. So I never want to hit the same thing twice. So for a long time, we used rotary sanders, and then we would use a multi-head, and then we would use
like planetary. Some will say planetary. In basic terms, it means like the planets; they rotate orbitally, and then there's several different types. Some were redesigned, modified buffers, and what I'm seeing today is manufacturers are actually engineering and designing them for rotary sanding with weights and steely plates and everything. And it's gotten. Yeah. What do you? I think that guys are starting to use them, but I have not heard yet all the data in on how to properly run. How do you run those machines? Because I've gone in and seen scratch pattern that was ridiculous, and other people say, yes, they didn't use this right. What's the right way to run these machines, these multi-head machines?
So there's a misconception, a false bill of sale that a lot of people have, where you'll see people are sold on the machine on the premise that you can, you can just push around like a lawnmower. It doesn't have a scratch pattern, or you can maneuver it any way, you can sand in any direction and stuff. And that's the first thing that we have to fight when somebody comes in, buys a planetary, starts using it, and then doesn't understand why their floors are all scratched up.
Right.
We call it the chicken scratch. I just did with NWFA, the planetary school, with Wayne down at Middle Tennessee Lumber, and that was kind of one of my goals. And that was great. Meeting Wayne was one of the best times I ever had. But doing the planetary school, I walked in there, and nobody was really prepared with the whole kind of comprehensive information list, and I think I answered more or as many questions as the instructor did while we were there, just because there was just so much feedback and so little that people know. A lot of planetary stuff. there's different kinds of planetary sanders that operate on different principles, and a lot of people don't realize that. There's a free spin multi-disc. There's a counter-rotational planetary where there's a moon gear. There's a co-rotating planetary where there's a sun gear. And each of those machines has a different clock point. They have a different scratch. All of the machines clock. So you got to remember that you need to clock your machine. You got to remember that now you've taken that, however many pounds your buffer is, with a 16-inch buffer, with a if it's a 100-pound buffer, you've now taken that pressure per square inch and you've compressed it down to a smaller head that's cutting a smaller circle. Sure. So you've got to take your feed down. You've got to get your feed rate closer to what you need to hit that pressure per square inch, or pressure, the PSI, and feed the abrasive across the floor at the correct rate. So a lot of people are really buying them. They're underutilizing them. They use them as a 100 grit or they run 100 grit paper, 120 grit screen on them, and then that's it.
That's it.
Or they run, they bring them in and they throw what they would throw on their drum on them, and they would try and attack the floor. And that's a big one that I get on the feedback side as well. I tried to sand the floor with my planetary, but I didn't know. It never got anywhere. It didn't do a good job.
I've seen people try to do the entire floor, and I'm not sure that's I did that. I was in a place, and they're like, we're going to do the whole floor this way. It was taking forever. I grabbed a big machine, and I cut 40, 60. Then I went over to the planetary, and I had a great time with it. I thought they were taking way too much time and sitting in one spot far too long for what they were doing. And this was a very good machine.
I get that too, and then I go out onto their jobs, and I ask them to show me how they're running it, and they may come in with, let's say they come in with 36 ceramic from this manufacturer, and I say, all right, well, let's try a zirconia from this manufacturer.
Right, exactly.
And they say,
it's overkill.
Well, why would I move from ceramic to zirconia?
Right.
Zirconia is the ceramic. That's the premium abrasive. That's what
it's
I want.
Too sharp.
Well, I say that's cool. It works great for 3 feet, but you can't produce the fracture from your planetary that you're going to produce on your belt machine.
Right.
So you need to move to something that's going to have a fracturability of the abrasive, and so that's where I say start with zirconia, then move to ceramic, then move to your final, whether it's AO paper or mesh discs or whatever. But yeah, there's a lot of people really kind of thought they got a false bill of sale on a planetary sander, and now they're just using it as a buffer. We're doing, I've run a belt machine out of necessity, never in the last, since I brought in the discus, the big ones. We've never actually needed to run it. We've pulled it out a few times thinking that we would be faster. We're not. If we are faster, then we're just walking faster. And I like to tell people that I cut 18 inches for every 8 inches that you're cutting with your belt machine. So you have to walk 2.5 times as fast as I do with the planetary to make that kind of progress.
Right.
So, but that still doesn't quite sink in. Utilizing the planetary has made, knowing how to utilize the planetary and working with some of these guys, talking to them, getting them on it, and getting them using it the same way that I do, has led to a lot of people telling me, first off, the job's a lot easier on your body, but second off, it's coming out better, and I'm saving time because I'm not having to go through and do as much edging, or I'm not having to go through and do as many progressive passes with this, or so on and so forth.
That's the biggest deal. Oh my God, the amount of edging that's been eliminated from these projects is sick.
Yeah. Edging. It cuts down on your edging so much. I really, I love my edger. You've seen, everybody knows that I like my Typhoons and I like my B2s back in the day.
Yep.
I barely ever use the things anymore. Just out of the fact that I can actually do most of what I'm doing, I can do with the planetary, and then I can have Brad come in behind me with a Rotex or a Merca.
Yep.
And we cover twice as much ground as we do when we run a belt machine. If I have a job where I say we really need to get the belt machine out for this, you should see the way that my guy looks at me. He's like, "Oh, this job's just going to suck."
Right.
He's gotten so used to that. He never sanded any other way.
Right.
Other than me leading with the planetary and him coming behind me with a whether it's a Rotex or a Merca sander. And so there's a lot of, you have to utilize it though. You got to send it through, especially on a rough end. You got to send it through the progressive grits. You have to know what abrasive is going to work for the surface that you're working with. I just had a guy texting me today saying that he was using ceramic, 50 grit ceramic on something, and it just seemed like it was dying. I haven't had a chance to follow back up with him on that, but I would suggest maybe move to 40 zirconia, or maybe move to 60 zirconia, or maybe move to a different ceramic than the particular paper that you're running, because that particular paper is so hard and it's so sharp that I call it a rake versus a squeegee.
Sure. Yeah.
What are you going to go out and are you going to clean the windshield on your car with your rake? No, you're not.
No.
You're going to clean the
scratch
windshield
pattern is sick. The other thing too is, one, the floor should be clean. I saw a job once. I had never seen a rotary machine. We had sold them, and I went. There was a claim. I said, "This has to be a rotary machine." I've never seen tic-tac-toe like this. Like you see hoops from small.
Yeah.
They were these big 16-inch. Looks like somebody was playing tic-tac-toe. And I said, "Do you have a rotary?" He goes, "Yeah." And it was basically a multi-head. And I said, "Not only that, but run your hand across this floor. I don't know what grit you used, but the sand on this floor has got to be at least 36 grit. At least." Didn't vacuum, just grinding raw rock into the floor. And you mentioned this. What if it's pine? What if it's fir? What if it's white oak? What if it's maple? What if it's something exotic? That's a big difference.
But a guy can pull a drum or a belt machine out. He can have 3 rolls of paper on his truck. He can have 16, 36, and 80.
Yeah.
And he's going to go do that, and he knows how to do it, and he's been doing it for his whole life. So he pulls out 16, 36, and 80, or he's got 16, 36, 60, or 16, 40, 80, whatever. And so these guys go out all the time, and these are the guys that, they're always, "Oh, no, I'd had that floor done by, 2 days ago." That's cool, but I'm still sanding the same number of feet in a whether it's a week or a day. And then, to be honest with you, we're sanding exponentially more square foot now than I could 2 years ago or 3 years ago before I brought in the newest planetaries. Sure. Because we get that much more done. If you look at, we actually keep track in the summer of how many square feet I sand in the summer with just me and one other guy, or a lot of times it's just me by myself, and it's in a month we're doing 60 to 80,000 square feet. That's sand and finish in whether it's bowling alleys, restaurants, whatever. That's how many feet that I'm sanding by myself with just a planetary sander.
Sure.
Because I do have I have the experience. But when I first brought that machine in, I was like, well, I feel like this is a false bill of sale. Right. And then I had to talk to Andreas Collette over in Europe, and he was telling me, no, don't take this paper and don't use that. And then he's telling me, I need this and I need to get this. And he straightened me out and got me some stuff that I didn't know that you could even get a hold of. And if you look at the parquet floor that I did, the repairs at in the apartment, the one that Kim was texting me about last week or 2 weeks ago, I sanded, that's cup moisture cure. It's not even oil-based urethane or anything. It's parquet. Each individual board is cupped. I did almost every tile on that apartment. I drilled, injected with epoxy, did fast cure, slow cure, and then pinned it down pheno style with the extended bars, pinned it down from the ceiling to let them dry. And I mean, even when I started sanding, that floor was not flat.
Right.
And I ran that entire floor with the planetary start to finish, except for the edges, and did some edging under the shelf and stuff like that. And it was just good abrasive selection, and knowing what I'm doing. But right now we are kind of fighting an educational battle, and that's something that I'm working at to get with some of these guys. And it was Wayne's idea to run the planetary school.
Good idea.
Yeah, and Wayne said, when I walked in the door and he was talking to me, he said, I hope to learn just as much as any of the people that are attending this class learn with this. And I think we left, and I think everybody kind of learned something, because I learned a little bit from Wayne, and I learned a little bit from Jared, and I learned a little bit from each of the guys that was there. But then I'm over here telling them, I'm like, no, you have to clock this machine. You have to take this machine and you want to pull it towards yourself. I want to see you run through the progressive grits on the low end. If you're going to start skipping grits, do it at 80. And they always think I'm crazy when I say do it at 80. Don't do it at 40. You know what I mean?
Why fight a machine you've never used before? Because it's
yeah.
Like when you train somebody to do a buffer, I'll go out and I'll run it with my pinky because I'm using a pad with a 220
yeah.
screen, and then I'll go, you want to try it? And you throw a 60 grit screen under there. It just, boom, there they go.
My dad taught me how to buff with he took one of the big 44x70 36 grit belts, and he cut it into one of our Rotovac hard plates, and he bolted it onto the hard plate, and he was like, here. And I always think of the Saturday Night Live with the Bill Brasky, and they say, oh yeah, one of the jokes is we have Bill Brasky taught his son to drive by entering him in the Indy 500.
Right.
And crashed and died, and over the flames you could hear Bill Brasky say, well, it would have happened at some point.
Yeah, rub some dirt and walk it off.
Yeah. So
well, it's good that you do that, because when I, as a distributor, I sell all the stuff, and then I'd be like, well, this particular rotary, planetary, whichever, because there's different ones, all the weight, because now you're adding weight to it, is all stacked up the center over the motor. Then the others have the weights stacked, I like, around the base, around the bottom, like as if you were to kind of stand on it. So some will tip and rock. And by the way, the biggest thing that got me with the rotary machines was we're starting to get large I-beam steel construction, 4-foot centers, and you're getting that resonance frequency. And, Hummel's always had a bad name for no reason. It's just the way the machine clocks it and the way it goes. And all of a sudden you're getting this resonance frequency. Nothing's going to fix it. And I had a big $3 million project. I said, get up there with a rotary machine. We got up there. Now, they didn't have weights at the time, so we found a bunch of Ardex or Mapei or something, and we put some wood on top of it so we didn't overheat the motor, and we stacked about 80 pounds on the thing, and we got rid of all that resonance. And that's what got me thinking, as these rotary machines get better, there is a definite place for these, especially because they're eliminating all that edging, all that back-breaking, hernia-causing edging.
Engineered floors, cork floors, all that
Engineered,
kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Yep. Driving, everybody gets the one time on an engineered floor, roll a belt machine across it, and you get the butt end joint where you've got the valley from the relief of the two pieces on an engineered floor,
sure,
and catch a wheel on a Hummel or catch a wheel on any belt machine and get a stop mark, and then you go to try and blend it out, and then the next thing you know, you're through the veneer layer. We do a lot with engineered. I'll start in with a 50 grit diamond and just knock the finish off, and then start in with 60 or 80 paper, and that's, I'm running as few cuts as I can.
Sure.
Because I don't want to see, and I don't want to be attacking the floor. I do a lot of like antique historical restoration type work for people. These are the kind of people that I was one time I was talking with Ken about this is, like you don't see a lot of pictures of my jobs because a lot of my customers don't want me taking pictures of their jobs.
Sure.
But we're doing, antique type restoration stuff where maybe the floor doesn't have a lot of life left on it. That's a big thing for me. And that's a huge draw of the planetary is I can take off as little wood as I can.
Sure.
Or like in the bowling alleys where now even the wood approaches that are left or the wood lanes that are left have been sanded so many times over the last 100 years that for me to come in and do a refinish in, get all the finish off and clean them up, I'm going to be running the risk of sanding through the tongue and groove and showing all the nails. But now I can take in one hit with 80 grit, knock all the finish off, and start in and maybe do a 100 grit pass, and I'm good to go.
You know what this generation of flooring people does? And then we never talked like this. It was just go sand the floor, make it look great. I hear all the time now, we got it flat, got to get it flat, going to get it flat, need it flat. And I didn't really know what they're talking about. I just did a floor with somebody. Oh, my God, it looked like a pool table.
Yeah.
I mean, it was never really, our intention was, follow what the book said, go with the grain, back and forth, blah, blah, blah. Now guys are cutting 45s, 15s, rotary sanding. They're intentionally trying to make these floors elitely flat. That's a goal now, huh? I mean, usually just the floor looked great, it looked great. But they're coming out flat as a pool table.
A lot of us got into the whole like competitive flat thing probably 6 or 8 years ago.
Yeah, what is that? Explain that to me.
So that's like that's just for bragging rights over the next dude. See who can hold the floor as flat as you can from start to finish. And Clint Fudge is always going to win that. Everybody sees his floors. And Tan Allman, and I think he's the other one out of Australia, and Fino's floors are table flat all the time. These guys, we're always going to lose to them. But some of the American guys got got picked up on that. And then I was still running big buffers with hard plates and all that. So I would run through hard plate, screen, square
Steelies.
buffer. Yeah, all this crazy stuff that I was coming up with. And so we were trying to compete to see who could keep a floor the flattest. And it let you learn a lot about your sanding sequence so that you could figure out, like, once you figure out where that dish out in the soft grain is coming from, then you know where to eliminate it, and you know how to work that. And then dish out with, especially with planetary, if you dish out at a lower grit, then that's just that much harder that you have to work to get that soft grain scratch out on your final when you go to put your stain down. I can't tell you how many floors I see guys first or third or fifth time with a planetary, and they rip the soft grain out sideways, and they put a nasty, gnarly scratch in the soft grain, and they can get it out of the whole rest of the floor, but they can't get that scratch out of the soft grain, and that's when they're calling me. That's when they get in my messages, and they want to know, what's going on. But the flat thing was actually very uniquely suited to me because, in the bowling business, we only had 40 thousandths of an inch to work with in any direction, so it's easy to keep what I'm trained to do is I'm trained to work and sand as flat as I can. We were putting down gloss moisture cure on everything, so you saw every scratch and every reflection, and that kind of stuff just wasn't acceptable to our customer base back in the day.
Little segue: can you still get moisture cure? We stopped selling it because the lockers cost more to store it than the finish did.
We have exemptions in a lot of the states. Any state allows an exemption for it. So like our moisture cure is not coming from Lenmar or Scania or anything like that. Our moisture cures are coming from industrial suppliers. But yeah, we can still get it. I don't know what all the states are. Where there are some states, I think California, oddly enough, not New York right now, where it is banned, just outright banned. And we'll have to, like, if I'm doing work in those states, I'll have to put water-based bowling lane finish down, which is available, but it's just not common. But I mean, I might coat, back in the day, we would coat, the first year, I think we sanded like 8,000 lanes while I was working for my dad. And I think I coated 80 wood bowling lanes this year. So, most of the lanes are synthetic, so I don't have to so much worry about that anymore.
Listen, you brought something up too. You mentioned dish out of the soft grain. In Wood Floor Business Magazine, and people can just put it in the search engine box. I saw you see the Bobby Finch floor. It's pine.
I love that floor.
Yeah. Well, you and I both spotted that because I noticed you left a little note about it, and I did too. Is that what I'm seeing? It looks like he purposely dished out the grain and either stained it or burned it. What was that for? Look on people that are listening. Look, put Bobby Finch or Wood Floor Business and look at some of these floors. It's really cool. Explain this floor to me.
All right, so Bobby Finch. All right, so I think Bobby is one of the coolest dudes, and I know the guy. I've met him in person several times. So Bobby had a pine floor that, and I tried to nominate this for like every Wood Floor of the Year award because I thought it was one of the coolest things. So they took a pine floor.
Was it yellow? Was it yellow?
I think it was yellow pine.
Or hard, it wasn't white pine. Okay.
Yeah, he actually texted me about it, and he was like, "How would you do this?" And I'm like, "Okay, I'll run you through how I would do it." And I'm pretty sure he wound up doing almost exactly what I had told him, or he came pretty close. Because so what they did was, before they ever even installed it, they took it out. I think they did it at a shop, and they took it out and they laid it out in several different directions, and they made a fake skips on with an edger. So they took a like a 16 or 24 grit edger disc. This is something that me and Clint Fudge both have done in the past, and they just knocked a corner off of it to make a, you let the edger skip across the edge of a board. Mm-hmm. So they distressed it, they did all that, they burned it, and then they actually brushed it with the deck brushing machines.
I noticed they burned it. Okay.
Yeah. So they burned it, brushed it, and they ran the linear deck brushing machines, because Bobby has those machines for refinishing out exterior decking. And so he scalped out all the soft grain. Then they took it in the house. They installed it. I think they stained it and finished it in place, but you'd have to talk to Bobby.
Okay.
That would be actually probably a pretty cool interview about how he did that floor, but that's like one of my favorite floors.
It was cool. We talk about rotary. Before they had this stuff, a buddy of mine did a 10,000-foot barn. It wound up in Boston Magazine. And they knew I did floors, and his wife's an artist, and she didn't know I know floors. And I started walking through with her and saying, I think we should start the installation under the beam, and it's all wide plank pine, and the 10,000 pegs. He had his kids. One would drill. One would take a little Q-tip with glue. One would put the peg in. One would put the screws in. Then he'd go behind with a little belt sander. And I said, we should sand, it's Eastern white pine. We should do this whole building with just a buffer. 60, 80, 120, 100, whatever. Let's just screen this whole place out. I didn't think about it at the time. What do you think it did? It didn't knock down the knots. And she loved it. It was almost like this floor has the soft grain dugout. It contoured the knots to where they were round. It looked, so we coated it. It looked amazing. I'm glad I didn't put a flat machine on it.
I get a lot of, and so like I get a lot of customers that tell me that they like it when, especially in pine floors or Doug fir floors, where they can see the knot stand out of the floor.
Yeah.
And they'll actually ask me for that kind of stuff, and we'll get, I'm a lot of my jobs get really unusual. We get a lot of people that ask, for the non-traditional things, and so we'll incorporate pretty much anything that we need to get it done. And I always say that I kind of have made a living out of doing the things that nobody else wants to do, whether, it's because it's a pain in the butt or because they don't think that it's profitable. And I turn it into something that I can make a lot of money off of when I need to. So.
All right, you just helped me out. My next section of questions was about profitability. It's so eclectic out there. New guys are making $6-7 a foot where we used to make $1, but they're not producing the kind of work that we did. And then there's the guys that are the tweeners. You think moving forward, guys can make money in flooring as installer, sander, finisher?
Yes, I think that. I think sand and finish is going to stay a really, really big kind of lucrative thing for a lot of guys. What I always try to tell people is that you always want to shoot to be the best in your area. Yeah. But if you fall short of that, that doesn't mean that you can't make a good living doing this. I've known quite a few guys from that've been around since the 60s, 70s, that kind of stuff, that made their lives out of it. And you see now a new generation of guys that are coming in that are doing really well on it. I don't think it's weird. We get into the competitive. What do you get for this? What do you get for that? And sometimes people will actually think that, these guys go out. A lot of these guys go out of their way to get in touch with me about this, and they say, "What do you charge for this?" And I'll say something that nobody ever believes, like, "Oh, that's $15 a foot." Well, how do you get $15 a foot for that? Well, I send them the estimate for $15 a foot, and they approve it. And if they don't, then I stay home and I don't do that because I don't need to do that. I can do any number of things. I can go out and do apartments. I can go out and do commercial floors. I could book 15 residential floors for the next 3 months if I want to. But if you want this and you want this craft thing that I'm offering you, you're going to pay that amount of money for it. So you have to have a standard with which to operate off of, whether it's a quality standard, whether it's an industry standard or anything like that. You have to have some kind of standard that you operate off where there's something that you're not willing to go below this. You're not willing to do this because I make the joke all the time. I can stay poor and die at home.
Sure.
I don't have to go out and do this kind of stuff, but you kind of got to stick to your guns on a lot of things. But yeah, you can make money, and I find new ways to make money in flooring and in refinishing. Almost every year, we're doing something new and different, adding some kind of thing into the business.
Like different revenue streams, or just different offerings.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the big things right now is I'm looking at one of my commercial contractors coating LVT for like a major maintenance thing instead of replacing LVT and throwing it away every 5 years for their restaurants.
Right to the landfill.
Yeah, exactly. Because I hate that. I don't like plastic going anywhere. I don't like LVT to begin with. If I could get them to put wood in, I would do it. I don't think it's a viable thing for them to do.
No.
And I've advised them against that because of the areas that they're going in and stuff like that. But yeah, so like I'm always trying to come up with. It's not like what's the new scheme. It's not. I'm not running scams or anything, but I try to come up with a new source of revenue, a new way to generate revenue. And I think I think that's why a lot of now, and I'm blessed to have this problem. I'm still busy from where we were 4 or 5 years ago when COVID started, and I'm still booked out for several months. And I still have Kim has to get with me about the articles and says, hey, can you write this? Or did you ever finish this? And I said, no, I haven't even seen my computer in 6 months or 4 months or something like that. We've got guys that I've sent machines and then forgot to send them the invoice that text me and say, hey, not for nothing, but I've got a machine here and it's here. So I know you paid for it, but I haven't paid you for it yet. Can you send me an invoice?
Yeah.
And it's just because I'm that busy. But like this week, I'm installing equipment in a bowling center because it needs to be done. It's one of them things that job had to fall in. It had to be done at some point. So I put it in December, January when I would be less busy. But I'm not dead. And when I put up a post the other day, I said, hey, I'm thinking about hiring a manager or thinking about hiring a laborer. I had 15 different people reach out to me from all across the country. Well, I'll come work for you, but why are you not busy? And I want to know why you're not busy.
Exactly.
And is it because you've limited yourself to just one thing?
Right. Are you a one-trick pony? Like, what's your team look like? What type of crews or how many people do you have working with you?
Just me and one other guy right now.
You talk to the most successful companies, one guy, two guy, three guy. Like people will say to me, "Oh, I'm busy all year." I'm like, "Well, it's you and your brother, so we get that." Yeah. When I see the big crews, they're working for far less money. They're pounding it out for builders, and it's like cookie cutter, and they're really not doing the really good work that you can take your time and cut your craft on.
Except for Low Country. But
they are something, man. Those guys, Jamie and Ken Rush and Jamie, they're something. I love it.
I put him out because when he ran the drum thing, he said, "I didn't learn how to split drum. Don't tell TJ." So yeah, you're exactly right. So me and one other guy. I mean, I've engineered everything in what we do to take the least amount of time and the least amount of effort to do it. So everything that we do is a system that is start to finish. And like I can take anybody, I could have you come on one of my jobs and within 2 or 3 hours, you would know what to do with the sand and finish side. So we could go out and sand, 4,000, 5,000 square feet in a couple days in these commercial settings because it's not a system that requires a lot of knowledge. It's just, this is how it works. This is what you're going to do. And nobody ever believes me until they come out and do it. And then they say, oh, wow, that was actually really easy.
Yeah, if you've got the chops and you understand wood and you understand the craft, I think I had the podcast with Fino, and Fino had said, when you're young and you're competitive and you're afraid of everybody and no one shares anything, but when you get to where you're experienced, you want to learn more. The only way to do that is surround yourself with people like you, and they share. I think it was Spriglin had said, we're working with 40 seasoned veterans here in Washington, and they're all in one room, and you're like, wow, this is so impressive. And not one of them agree. One will come up behind you and go, I would never do it that way. There's people doing everything different. Doesn't mean it's wrong at all. It's the end result.
And so many things happen. One of the big things and I go on these jobs with these guys a lot of times now. These are guys that I've never worked with or stuff. Sometimes we'll go out and sand floor with them to demo a machine or so on and so forth. And when I always tell people, like, they'll walk in and I set the machine down and I say, well, here we go. And they say, okay, well, how would you run it? And I'm like, well, I don't know. How would you run it? And they say, well, you're the guy that's here to show me and teach me how to run this machine. I said, but I want it to fit into your system, so show me how you would run it.
Right.
And when I go on your job, I'm doing the things the way that you need them done. I'm not doing them my way because you didn't bring me on to do it my way. If you did, you would have just hired me and subbed me the job.
Sure.
But so when I go out with these guys, I try to absorb what they're doing and pick up their systems, and they're never wrong because it's their job. Now I might throw in some things and say, here's a way that you can improve your system, or here's a way, if I see something really bad, I'll say, here's how I would do it. I stand with this guy, Bobby Pearson. I'll talk about him again later, where I go on Bobby's jobs and I say, okay, Bobby, tell me what to do. And every single time I'm on his job, Bobby, tell me what to do. What do you want me to do next? What grit do you want me to run? And he'll stop and he'll think, and he might say, well, what do you think we should do next? And then I say, okay, well, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I would do.
Right.
And Bobby and I have been standing together for 25 years.
Sure.
And on and off various things that we've done. I see Bobby comes up with some of the demo days and stuff like that, and he always introduces. I brought him up since he was knee high. He's like my son. And so, but I still tell him, you tell me what to do, or vice versa. But if he came out on one of my jobs, then it's the other way around.
Sure.
But 50 wood floor contractors are going to do things 50 different ways. And they're going to fight about whose is right, because it's all going to be about what their dad taught them or what their boss taught them or something, and so on and so forth. So I get so many guys that tell me, well, I say, why do you do that way? Well, that's how my dad taught me. Okay. And, was your dad, was he Jesus, or what was this?
Special powers?
Did he have magic?
Did he have a time machine in his bedroom?
What's the significance of your father to me? Because I've never met your dad.
Exactly.
But, yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Odie's Oil. Developed by a wood flooring pro, no finish is more safe, durable, beautifying, and versatile, with lower cost and higher profit margin. Experience the pinnacle of finish with free on-site demos and training. Learn more at odiesoil.com. That's ODIES oil.com.
I had a question for you, TJ. So when you're looking at this, a little while ago in wood floor business, I had Jen Hale. She's an occupational therapist. We were talking about, I went to her and I said, I have customers turning 60, 65, 67, 70, and I was amazed to hear that they all have a little plan to keep themselves healthy. How long do you think you can do this? Plan on doing this? How long do you think other people can do this? I mean, I just did a floor today. I'm 61.
I'm certain that I could do this until I'm 150.
That's what I was thinking. You look like 149-ish. In dog years? What's that in dog years?
But in actuality, judging by literally everybody that's ever lived in my family, I'll probably be dead by the time I'm 60. But I'd like to find some kind of balance. I do have a plan now to kind of slowly phase out of things. I think a lot of the traps that the 1 and 2 person companies fall into is not having some kind of option to continue without yourself. So transitioning a lot into sales, doing things with different companies to get their products on the market, helping them out, and then also training some people. Yeah, I'm going to bring some more people on and getting them trained, because I do have a lot of work. One thing that everybody always says to me is, well, it sounds like you could have 10 or 12 guys working, and I definitely could.
Right.
But what does that get me? It doesn't get me anywhere. Do I want a whole lot of money over the short term, or do I want a decent amount of money over the long term? And I'm going to take the long term every single time. I want to make sure that I can guarantee success over a range of years, because I've seen the bottom drop out of the industry several times. And we talk about the bowling stuff. And when I first started in bowling, it was 90% wood lanes, 10% synthetics. Sure. And after 10 years, that had flipped. It was 90% synthetic and 10% wood. And we had put ourselves out of a job by installing synthetic lanes. There used to be 50 guys that do what I do. Now there's only 5.
Yep.
And I say the whole world can be plastic in a matter of a year if you're looking at it. It took less than 10 years for our entire industry to transition over to plastic.
Yeah.
And so if I could see that happening again at any time, I'm not going to work myself out of a job as fast as I can.
Oh, no, absolutely. A buddy of mine done floors as long as I had. We went to a home show, like just a big home show, walk around, see what floor companies were there. And we went to some booth for like siding or lumber or whatever, and someone had said to my buddy, so what do you do? And I'm waiting for him to say, I'm a floor guy. And he goes, I train flooring people to open their own businesses. Because he used to have all these guys. At the very end of his career, it was him and 2 guys. Because every time he got 6, 7, or 8 guys, they got really good and got their business cards, went out, started their own company. Even around here, if a machine goes up for sale, it'll be gone in 2 minutes. People don't like those machines to be available in their neighborhood.
I
right?
do that I've been doing that for years.
Absolutely.
You're
that guy.
If I see a cheap machine, I'm buying it, and it can go in my shed, or I'll sell it in Texas somewhere. Maybe if I don't like a guy in the market, I'll make sure I put an $800 Hummel for sale, and I'll do stuff like that. Yeah, no, I go big time area denial. I'll make sure that. But then
area denial, I love it.
Yeah, on the same side, I think I've started about. I would say I've got probably from my father's company. There's at least 5 or 6 guys that do floors that refinish wood floors all the time now. From my side, I've gotten 2 kids started local to me to get them going where they're operating as their own companies now. And they're both doing pretty good. I would say like mid to high end work in the area. One of those guys is actually moving down to North Carolina, so you North Carolina guys are going to have a problem with him pretty soon.
Oh boy! Well, I got into this recently. I have I call my gap year. I walked away from my job. I'll be doing other things, but refurbishing machines. I just had a buddy of mine. He sadly passed away while sanding, which that doesn't happen too often. And his equipment sat in a barn for 3 years, and a young friend of mine went into business. I said, I know where to get this. Well, when I found it, it was rusted, rotted, molded. Great machine, too. So I took it home. I took every nut, every bolt, every slip pin, everything, laid it all out, and I refurbished every inch of it, put it back. It looked like factory new, and the kid's in business now. I didn't charge him. I'm like, just go, put this machine back out where it belongs and make it sing. And he's been doing such a great job with it. Yeah. And then I was researching you. I saw a bunch of stuff. You did a 59 American and a 1930 American 12, I think.
I've got a 59 American 12. That was actually, so my grandfather bought that for the bowling center, and then my dad had it, and then another guy bought it, and I bought it back off of him. So yeah, that's a bowling lane drum. So that's a dual wheel American 12. That machine, I need it to knock tilts out of lanes because it can overhang the gutter. Oh. So I can cut down the one board.
So the wheels are offset. Is that like a 1930s, late 20s machine? How old was that?
The American 12s is from the 50s. I've got an American 8 from the 30s.
Okay.
That was like that had a wooden handle when I got it.
Yeah.
I switched it over to the newer steel handle. That machine. Actually, so now one of my cousins runs that machine in his day-to-day operation. So he does floors like two towns away from me, and he has that machine now. I like that machine quite a bit. I like the old split drums. I like the way that they cut, and I like the way that they can level. So like a split drum. A belt machine wants to contour to whatever it's sanding, but a split drum wants to just plow right through
as long as you set the split right, and if you just won't overdo that, then it doesn't thump on you. But that's what I ran. Although I wish this new generation could run a split drum so it would explode on them. There's nothing. You'll be in the room with your buddy and they go, "Hey, listen to the kid." Everybody shut up, listen, and you hear tick 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 tick, kaboom! Drum.
I've got them that'll beat you. It was blowing the 44x70s on a lane sander.
Oh, ow!
And, that's the most. Even a guy that's blown 1,000,000 wraps on a floor sander, will duck when that thing comes off.
Is that urine inducing? I would wet my pants if I heard that thing.
I'm the only one, man. I'm Steven, this thing will never scare me when it does it. The belt just comes right off, and I'll go, I'll make a noise or something.
Yeah.
But everybody else ducks. And like I've had guys crawling down on the floor thinking, it's a horrific sound.
Yeah.
It sounds like lightning is happening in the building.
It's just scary. And then you'd hear it you can hear it starts to tear it, and so it goes tick, 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 and we'd be like the new person. You're like, oh, they don't hear it coming, and then let's say it's 36 grit. The thing explodes, and when it does, it shreds all the grit off the thing, and now the whole floor has to be vacuumed and surgically cleaned because now your edger's picking up 36 grit, and you're trying to cut with 80.
Yep. Yeah. I kind of missed that sound because that was how you knew my dad was having a bad day.
Right? My favorite is this new generation. They don't know that the belts aren't tracking. So instead of cleaning the upper roller, they track it and track it and track it. And I've had people cut the door open in the shape of the belt, go the other way and cut right through their drop arm, their overhead cam, just running through, cutting through it with the belts.
When we were doing service for a little while for some of the local guys, I would get machines that would come in that had the holes all the way through on the belt where they ran the belt all the way through. And then my other favorite one was the rollers where the rubber's gone from one side, but then so you got bare metal on one side, and then the other side is the same thickness.
Yep.
Or the other side is like the original factory thickness, and I'm like, how are you tracking a belt on that?
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, I just adjust it every time. I say, well, geez, man, I once went like 4 years without adjusting the tracking on my machine because I never adjust the tracking on a belt machine.
No, as long as it's clean. It's funny you mentioned that. We can agree that you could call it 8-inch, some 7 and 7/8, whatever, but let's just call it 8-inch. I had a machine come in, the upper roller was missing 1 1/4 inches. He had run it and it just tilted it and tilted it and tilted it and tilted it until part of it was missing. It must have been throwing sparks because it ate through all the steel components inside this thing. And I'm like, you've run this like this. You've been tracking this like this until it cut through both sides. It actually cut through it.
How about the guys that always talk about dressing the drums on the belt machines? And then you get their machines in for service and their drums are all coned one way and their rollers coned the other way.
Going the other way.
Yeah, like that's another favorite of mine.
People sometimes they think you got superpowers. Like somebody will call me from anywhere in the world, and like I'm having a problem with my belt sander because tracking here, it's tracking there, and I'll go, "Did you sand a pine floor yesterday?" And they go, "Yeah, how'd you know that?" I'm like, did you take a look at your upper roller? Because when you sand stuff, that the pine and the dust and the tar and the dirt, it sticks up there. It starts to clump, starts tracking, starts digging into the floor. Don't even bother looking to see how filthy it is, because that's what's throwing them off. And they will yell at their mechanic and say that the drum's a disaster, their machine is junk, and all they did was sand a filthy floor.
I always prefer the simplest explanation, and people will call me and text me all the time about, oh, no, yeah, all of a sudden I've got chatter in my machine. I was like, oh, yeah, what were you doing yesterday? Oh, well, I was sanding this. I say, okay, do me a favor. What? Flip your machine on its side and tap the drum a couple times and let all the dust that's behind your drum fall out of it.
Yeah. Yep.
Everybody, what? No. And then they say, oh, yeah, no, okay, yeah. And then they send me the picture, and it looks like there's a sandcastle on the floor from all the dust that's compacted into the back of their drum.
Oh, yeah. Well, we don't mention brands, but I'm going to slam the Alto American Sander B2 for a second. You know what's wrong with them? Nothing. You know what happens when they come in? The connector from people yanking it, throwing the cord. I'll look at a machine like, thing's a piece of junk, and you wiggle it, and it's going off and on. It's not even the switch. I've taken the harness apart in the switch. It's burnt up in the switch housing, or underneath the metal strain relief, it's burnt out and arced out because of them yanking the cord over and over, throwing the cords everywhere. You said the simplest answer.
We had to upfit the cord on the Typhoon because we kept getting guys that were breaking them.
Yeah.
They never, and it's always, they never actually break one off, but they actually yank them so hard that they break the copper inside.
Yeah.
And, yep. Text me and say, oh yeah, no, the Typhoon, hey, great machine, but it won't turn on right now. I said, oh, okay. Yeah, we need to change your cord.
I say, like, when my wife takes time to run her car to the mechanic and they're like, little lady, where's your husband? You're out of gas, right? And you're like, oh God, here we go. And have you had this situation where they'll say, maybe it's out of gas and you want to strangle somebody. Then you find out that your gauge doesn't work. And in fact, you are out of gas. It's the same thing. Yeah. I tell people, I know you don't want to hear this, but have you checked your cords?
Yeah.
I just got a new cord. I go, did you wire it yourself? And the machine's dogging. Yeah, because you only hooked up one side of a 210. You're running a 110 on one side of a 230 sander, and because your wiring is wrong. It's just that simple.
I had a guy last year that had a booster box hooked up to, and he's like, yeah, the booster, for some reason, it won't turn higher than 120.
Oh.
So, what? Yeah, it won't get any higher than 120 volts. I said, how many wires are going in that? 4?
Four.
Oh, hey, I hate to break it to you, but something else in that box is live right now.
Yeah. You didn't cut and remove the white one by any chance?
You're probably not going to want to touch that.
Yeah, don't touch anything.
Yeah, because either your ground or your neutral is very much so getting 120 volts right now.
Yeah, you're about the way to go to TJ Haas's School of Safety for Electricians. Let's avoid that. All right, listen, before we wrap it all up, I did want to ask you something. So somewhere in the magazine, in Wood Floor Business Magazine, they had said, there was, this little poll where I think they said, name how your flooring week went based on the title of a movie. And you said Dr. Strangelove. I ask you this for a reason, because I
do not remember the week, but that was a combination of that week was very weird. I do remember writing that comment. I don't remember what the week was, but it was. I had a particularly weird week, and things have to get really, really weird for me to like bug out on a weird week.
Yeah, you can handle weird. I'm pretty sure.
I also wanted to pick the longest title that I could for that. I have to find the longest title that I can.
I live in a perpetual cycle of My Cousin Vinny, because I just love it. I love it. I love it. Because when I go into a house and they start with it's not rocket science, or they'll say, I don't have any. There's no water in my house. And I love to go, the laws of physics cease to exist with your floor. Was this floor built by Jack and his magic beanstalk beans? It's your basement's flooded, or whatever, or you got the radiant heat cranked up. You left for a month. Come on, the laws of physics would tell us what's wrong with your floor. And by the way, you paid your floor installer a year and a half ago, and now he's an idiot.
Yeah.
But it was fine then.
I love that one. That's one of my favorites. When did you turn the heat off?
Yeah.
And the floor has been installed 2 years ago. How is this somebody's problem? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right, listen, I'm going to ask you your quick fire questions, and we'll move on happily from there. Are you ready, TJ?
I don't know. I think I might be.
These are pretty easy, but you got these. They like us to rapid fire these things off, but this isn't something I did not ask you. If you weren't in hardwood flooring, what do you think you'd be doing?
I'd probably go back to working facility stuff, just because there's so much there that I do and know.
Gotcha. Is there a particular wood you like to work with?
Yeah, I actually like to work with maple.
Yeah, it's tricky stuff.
Yeah.
You think there's a word that describes, or just one word that can describe the perfect hardwood floor?
No, because so many customers have so many different things, and I like a lot of the weird stuff, like we were talking about with that Bobby Finch floor.
Yep. You got one special tool of any kind in your toolbox that you just wouldn't go without?
Yeah, the RO90 Rotex from Festival.
Nice. If you had a choice, would you prefer on most floors a water finish or a classic oil finish?
I'm a big water-based guy. I've water-based at home. I think it's been fine for years.
Is there a particularly favorite place that you ever did an installation or a sand to finish?
Favorite place? Yeah, I do. Well, yeah, actually, I have the Parquet place. I call it the Parquet Palace. It's a big, tall building with a bunch of glue-down concrete parquet. Oh, no, I have to switch this one. Yeah, the old Lincoln Country Club in Grand Rapids, Michigan was one of the coolest buildings I've ever been at.
Awesome. All right, last question. In your home, any carpet or vinyl, LVT?
In my house?
Yeah, in your house.
I got a cheap laminate in my kitchen.
It's not carpet, though.
No, it's not carpet. There's no carpet in my house.
I'll give you that. That's the right answer, by the way. That's what they're looking for. Listen, I appreciate you spending this amount of time with me, and I'm going to hold you to it. We're going to tell Kim Walgren at Wood Floor Business we're going to come up with our Halloween special. We have plenty of time to put it together. We'll interview all the people about the creepy stuff they've been through.
We should do this.
We will do this. And hey, Mad Science Floors. It's still that might be my favorite name for a floor, because how many times when we did it, they used to call me the Mad Chemist. Stop playing with your finishes and get them down, right.
We had the Mad Chemist in the bowling side of it.
All right, TJ, I appreciate you taking this time with me, for being all things wood floor. Thank you very much. We will talk again very soon, I'm sure.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, buddy. Take care now. All right, bye-bye.
Thanks to TJ for taking the time to share his wood flooring wisdom with us. If you enjoyed this episode of All Things Wood Floor, please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Thanks for listening.